Welcome to Mount Panorama for our highlights of round 8. It was Portis taking his second pole position in front of Jones in third, and on the left of the Bentley team in their new blue and orange livery. So that's Rasmussen in second and our championship leader Whitlock in fourth. The front of the pack got through the start cleanly, while at the back there was some drama. It was the green Aston Martin of Wolf in contact with Polo, leaving Wolf sideways. And this would prove to be a race of attrition, with much of the track offering little room for mistakes. Battle in his first race of the season found the barriers on lap 1, unfortunately impacting a few drivers. No doubt he picked up suspension damage, so had to limp back to the pits. But on his outlap, rejoining on lap 3, he was in the wall again, and luckily no other cars were collected. Battle retired, and I'm sure Panda felt nervous when he arrived on the scene, narrowly avoiding trouble there. And a little further up the track had another narrow escape, as Dan Shade was sideways. A lot of drama was happening all at the same time, so we'll have to go backwards to capture what happened. Jones had started third and went for a move on Rasmussen, the two giving each other plenty of room, and Jones went through to second. But it wasn't long before he ended up in a spin, leaving him sideways and in the path of the cars arriving. Rasmussen had just managed to find a path on the right, but Dan Shade was less fortunate and smacked the front of Jones. He slowed his damaged car down and retired, so that's how he ended up sideways. Going back again to lap 2, and Pitch had almost exactly the same incident as his teammate Jones, painfully dropping to 17th. Panda got collected and appeared to suffer a little bit of suspension damage, but decided not to pit. Bowers lost grip at the same corner and would pit that lap. On board with Gold, and an incident was sparked by Wolf nudging the wall, leading to Wolf pitting. The Canada Speedworks team were running well together, with Collis in 11th, but Polo was having a better season, and Collis let him go through. Polo now had a free opportunity to reach into the top 10, and he did catch up to the pack ahead and move up the order. Hosic's average result up until this point was 18th, but he was running so well in this race that he actually overtook the championship leader, putting himself into third. Gould was keeping pressure on Shaw until Shaw got in trouble. Surprisingly, Shaw's car was drivable despite being launched into the air, and he stayed out. Meanwhile, Gould a few corners later had some trouble of his own and picked up significant suspension damage, having to limp back to the pits and handing the position back to Shaw. Kapelke had lost connection on lap 2, rejoined in last position, and then had this spin on his 4th lap. He continued on, but retired a few laps later. On lap 5, Fukara and Shaw hit the wall. Many of the drivers did the same thing and got away with it, but in this case both of them pitted at the end of the lap. Shaw would later retire after another incident. Hosic was still holding third until his car being out of shape allowed Whitlock and Tim Shade to get through, and having lost momentum was soon overtaken by Tripod and Friesen, but it wouldn't be long until he regained a couple of positions. One of those positions was regained by Rasmussen crashing. Rasmussen was doing well in second after a good qualifying session, but ended up facing the wrong way. So his teammate Whitlock inherited the position. There didn't seem to be much damage to his car, but he took one of his mandatory pit stops at the end of that lap, exiting the pits in 12th. He stayed focused and would regain a few positions before the end. On lap 8, Corsaro nudged the wall on his right, leading to a hard crash. He was in 10th, and after Collis squeezed by, he went to the pits for repairs, finally exiting the pits in 18th. On board with Gold on that same lap, and Fukara ahead did almost exactly the same thing, but fortunately seemed to get away with it, although Fukara would have a few more incidents and took 3 pit stops. Only a couple of laps later, Corsaro was in trouble again, leading to another pit stop. He was then the last of the runners, but didn't give up and impressively still managed to regain some positions before the end. Jones was also in trouble again, having the exact same crash as Gould a few laps earlier. He would stop for repairs, exiting the pits running in 17th, and would later have another incident, leading to a 3rd pit stop, a far cry from his previous result of 2nd. On lap 16, Rasmussen took to the grass, soon joined by Bowers. Bowers would have a couple of crashes and did 4 pit stops, but stayed in the race. On lap 18, Rees, in his first race of the season, was running well in 5th. He was under pressure with Friesen and Corsaro behind him, but after crashing hard he retired from the race. It was then Hosic in 5th, but after hitting the wall he lost the position and things went from bad to worse. More or less getting away with the initial bump. A few corners later he smacked the wall again. and on the straight it was clear that he picked up suspension damage. He took his second pit stop, exiting the pits in 10th. Polo had been the one to move into 5th following Hosik's incident, and he also took his second pit stop at the end of that lap, but on his outlap he slid into the wall, which looked like a dramatic incident, but luckily his car seemed okay. That is until lap 27 when he did the same thing again, but this time the damage was severe, so he'd limped back to the pits, painfully losing a few positions before the end. Also just before the end, another incident for Pitch in 7th, leading to a third pit stop which lost him a few positions. And Panda had a dramatic crash, picked up some suspension damage, and like Pitch had already done 2 mandatory pit stops, but Panda decided to drive to the end of the race without pitting again, although he was 5 seconds per lap slower after the crash. Portis had stayed consistent, having started on pole, and crossed the line to take his first podium, doing it in style, winning the race. Whitlock was second and remains as the leader of the championship, with Tim Shade taking another third position. Tripod got his best result so far in an impressive 4th. Rasmussen had some bad luck but still got his best result, recovering to 6th and taking the fastest lap. A good result for Collis being in the top 10 for the first time. Likewise, Hosik had a good race with his best result so far. There were retirements for all 3 of the new drivers as they were thrown in at the deep end, having to do Mount Panorama for their first race. The standings are still being worked on, so we'll catch up with the team standings in the near future. Our next round will be an endurance race at Silverstone, and as usual we'll be doing race highlights, so we hope you'll join us then.